Big brother and little brother is a battle as old as time itself. Big brother Cain killed little brother Abel. Little brother Jacob took the birthright of big brother Esau. In the modern day, we settle things head on in the squared circle, but still, the big versus little battle wages on. The light heavyweight division will probably be in the shadow of the heavyweight division for all of time. It's in the name even, light heavy. A verbal markdown in quality. Boxing's marquee division and its little brother have a history, a lineage if you will, of little champion stepping up to face big champion. For the purpose of this video, I'll be including the cruiserweight middle brothers who also stepped up to face big brother. I'll also feature bonus bouts in which big or little brother may not have been champion, depending on the historical significance of the bout. Make sure you pay attention to the weight discrepancies in context of the time. You'll see the evolution of the weight classes as fighters get bigger over time. Let's begin way back in the black and white age. Our lineage begins with the early exploits of the third lineal heavyweight champion. After winning the middleweight title from Jack Dempsey, no, not that Jack Dempsey, and vacating it, Bob Fitzsimmons moved up to heavyweight and knocked out the universally recognized heavyweight champion, James J. Corbett, in 14 rounds. 167-pound Fitzsimmons was outweighed by 17 pounds against the 184-pound champion and became the lightest man to ever capture the heavyweight crown. For many reasons more is this event legendary in the annals of boxing, so I'll save that for a video of its own. I should also note that the light heavyweight division did not yet exist, hence why Bob moved from middle to heavy. Fitzsimmons would lose the title to James J. Jeffries and almost regain it before moving down to light heavyweight and winning the title, making him the first ever three-division world champion. Fitzsimmons is technically the first little brother to beat big brother. Technically. Tommy Burns was the universally recognized heavyweight champion. So this was before even the New York State Athletic Commission and National Boxing Association. Jack O'Brien was the former light heavyweight champion, having vacated it. These two have a complicated history that's worth a video of its own, so just know they fought a 20-round draw and Burns retained. I've yet to find any concrete tale of the tape for this fight, but for the sake of reference, I'll use their weights from their third bout, in which Burns was 175 pounds and O'Brien was 167 pounds. In boxing's first ever $1 million gate, 188-pound heavyweight champion Jack Dempsey defended his title against 172-pound light heavyweight champion Georges Carpentier. Dempsey floored the challenger twice in the fourth for the win. This was also the first fight sanctioned by the National Boxing Association, which would become the World Boxing Association in 1962, making Dempsey the inaugural NBA or WBA champion. The first battle between Peoples and Shadow champions. Tunney was the American light heavyweight champion underdog, up against the beloved Jack Dempsey. The Manasseh Mauler was heavily favored. Tunney pulled off what was ranked by Ring Magazine as the upset of the decade by decisioning Dempsey. Both men were 190 pounds. Tunney would win the controversial long count rematch too. And so began the lineage of shadow heavyweight champions. In a grand display of big versus little, former light heavyweight champion Tommy Loughran took super heavyweight Primo Carnera the distance. Loughran claims he won the fight. He was 186 pounds. Heavyweight champion Carnera was 270 pounds. The 84-pound discrepancy will be the largest of our lineage until 2009. In only the second heavyweight title fight between two black fighters, Joe Louis blasted his friend John Henry Louis out in the first round after 3 knockdowns. John Henry was the lineal and NBA light heavyweight champ, having been stripped of his NYSAC title for not fighting Tiger Jack Fox. The payday was Joe's gift to his friend, as he knew he'd have to retire right after due to deteriorating eyesight. Joe was 200 pounds and John Henry was 181 pounds. In one of the greatest title fights ever, reigning heavyweight champion Joe Louis took on the reigning light heavyweight champion Billy Conn. After falling on the cards, Louis came back to finish Conn in the 13th after being staggered himself in the 12th. Their weights vary depending on the source. Some say Louis was 199.5 pounds and Conn was 174, while others say Louis was 204 pounds and Conn was 169. Conn himself said that Joe was 199.5 and that he was 168.5. Former super champion Joe Louis couldn't fight off the itch to return, and he needed the money. Charles was the heavyweight champion, recognized only by the NBA. Though he'd racked up some solid wins at light heavy, he was never given a title shot and moved up to heavy. This fight was for the undisputed title, as Louis still held the lineage. 185-pound Ezzard Charles outboxed the 218-pound Brown Bomber for the decision and recognition, though he still remained in Joe's shadow, continuing the lineage of shadow champions after Jersey Joe and Gene Tunney. The Cincinnati Cobra at 182 pounds welcomed light heavyweight champion Joey Maxim at 181 pounds. It was their fourth, but not final meeting. Charles won by unanimous decision. Aside from Charles, Maxim fought many notable names multiple times, like Archie Moore, Jersey Joe Walcott, and Eddie Machen. He fought Floyd Patterson and Sugar Ray Robinson too. In what would be the career finale of The Rock, he took on the reigning light heavyweight champion, the Old Mongoose, Archie Moore. Marciano and Moore were both 188 pounds. After being dropped in the second, Rocky stormed back to floor Moore in the 9th after multiple knockdowns through the rounds. Had Moore won, he would have made history as the oldest heavyweight champion ever and the first light heavyweight champion to capture the heavyweight crown. Marciano retired as the only ever undefeated heavyweight champion. Two men seeking to make history after the departure of the flawless Rocky Marciano. Floyd Patterson to become the youngest champion ever and the first Olympic gold medalist to win the heavyweight strap. Archie Moore, again, to become the oldest heavyweight champion ever at 39 and to become the first man to claim the heavyweight title while reigning as light heavyweight champion. Patterson was 182 and Moore was 188. An odd occurrence of the light heavyweight being heavier. Patterson would emerge the historical figure and unfortunately serve as a shadow champion, together with inaugural WBC champion Sonny Liston next, between the reigns of the Brockton Blockbuster and the Greatest. The significance of this bonus bout is the future of both men. Less than a year later, Ernie Terrell would capture the vacant WBA title against Eddie Machen and go on to learn the hard way that Cassius Clay was now Muhammad Ali. 4 years later, Bob Foster would become the light heavyweight champion. So the match was a champion versus champion matchup before the fact. 203-pound Ernie stopped 183-pound Bob in the 7th after dropping him with a right to the chin. Foster rose at 8, but tumbled back down, beginning an unfortunate pattern at the heavyweight rank for the light heavyweight marvel. In his final tune-up before settling who the true heavyweight champion really was, 209-pound Joe Frazier welcomed 188-pound Bob Foster's quest of ascending to heavyweight. As I stated in the 70s Timeline documentary, it wasn't pretty for Foster. Frazier easily squared the reigning light heavyweight champion away and survived Foster's well-documented power for a second-round knockout. Frazier went on to prove he was the only heavyweight champion in the fight of the century, opposite Muhammad Ali. 2 years after being squashed by Smokin' Joe, Bob Foster tried his luck again, this time against the loser of the fight of the century. He was outweighed by 41 pounds, and he was dropped 7 times by the fighter, who would end up becoming the greatest. He did, however, become the only man to cut Muhammad Ali. Muhammad was 221 pounds, and Bob was 180 pounds. 204-pound Ossie Ocasio would challenge 214-pound Larry Holmes for the WBC title and find he was out of his league. Not only because Holmes was that great, but because Ocasio was better suited for the yet-to-be-created Cruiserweight division. This would be confirmed when Ocasio won the inaugural WBA Cruiserweight title in 1982. He would resume heavyweight activity later, taking on notable names like Ray Mercer, Tyrell Biggs, and Lennox Lewis. He went the distance with them all, playing the role of the veteran journeyman as they found their way as pros. It was the 30-year anniversary of Marciano's crossweight matchup with Archie Moore, in which he notched his 49th and final victory on a perfect career. 222-pound Larry Holmes had the very same opportunity. Meanwhile, 200-pound Michael Spinks could break the curse and be the first little brother to beat Big Brother for the heavyweight strap. History either way, the best type of fights. After 15 rounds, the Spinks jinx emerged as Michael broke the curse and became the first ever reigning light heavyweight champion to gain the heavyweight title. He won the rematch too, controversy or not. For historical purposes, the blowout of Michael Spinks at the hands of Mike Tyson must be accounted for. 212-pound Spinks was undefeated and had dethroned super champion Larry Holmes to become the lineal champion, all after rising from the light heavyweight division, a division he dominated. 218-pound Tyson's prime display was so grand that casual minds only remember Spinks for this night and not the all-time great light heavyweight career he had. Tyson was truly the undisputed champion from this point on, and the baddest man on the planet. Spinks should be commended for being such a conquest. Originally, this was supposed to be the highly anticipated super fight between Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield, but Tokyo Douglas had other plans. Still, 246-pound Buster was the undisputed heavyweight champion, and 208-pound Holyfield was the former undisputed cruiserweight champion, who'd moved up to compete for the heavyweight strap. He won it by knockout over a less than impressive Douglas in the 3rd round, and the world wondered if the Tyson fight was next. A convoluted series of events would ensue, delaying the fight even further. The undefeated former WBO light heavyweight champion Michael Moorer captured the vacant WBO heavyweight crown in 1992 against Burt Cooper, but his place in this lineage has to do with his 1994 clash against unified, lineal, WBA, IBF heavyweight champion Evander Holyfield, who himself was a former undisputed champion at both heavyweight and cruiserweight. Both men were 214 pounds. After being knocked down early, Moorer bounced back to capture the unified title and become the first and only ever Southpaw lineal heavyweight champion. He would also go on to become the only ever light heavyweight champ to win a portion of the heavyweight title more than once. Sadly, Moorer is probably most remembered for being the man George Foreman beat to become the oldest heavyweight champion ever. Billed appropriately as finally, the overdue battle between former undisputed champion Mike Tyson and former undisputed cruiserweight champion Evander Holyfield, who by now was also a former two-time heavyweight champ, had finally come. Tyson was on a ruthless trail post-incarceration back to the undisputed title, having captured the WBC and WBA titles. Holyfield had returned from heart problems and looked less than impressive. 215-pound Holyfield shocked 222-pound Tyson and the boxing world to become the second three-time heavyweight champ after Muhammad Ali, and kickstarted his second prime. Tyson never truly recovered from this loss and was disqualified in the rematch for being a little too hungry. Perhaps the most talented specimen to ever put on a pair of gloves, and the 1990s fighter of the decade, Roy Jones Jr., stepped up to the big leagues in an effort to dethrone WBA champion John Ruiz, who himself was the first ever Latino heavyweight champ. Jones Jr. was the reigning undisputed light heavyweight champion and a former champion at regular and super middleweight. Ruiz was 226 pounds, Jones Jr. was 193 pounds. Captain Hook accomplished his mission by unanimous decision and dropped back down to light heavyweight with all the bragging rights in the world. He would go on to become the first heavyweight champion to drop to light heavy and win a title. Rumors persisted of potential bouts with Lennox Lewis, Evander Holyfield, and Mike Tyson, but nothing ever materialized. Well, at least not till 2020. The Quiet Man managed to regain the title after Jones Jr. dropped divisions and ran into James Lights Out Tunney, who was seeking to become the third middleweight champion after Bob Fitzsimmons and Roy Jones Jr. to become heavyweight champion. He would beat Ruiz by decision, even dropping him in the 7th, and send him into a 10-day retirement. Now, why only 10 days? Because Tunney tested positive for steroids, and the fight was deemed a no contest. Therefore, Ruiz was reinstated as WBA champion. Ruiz was 241 pounds, and Tunney was 233 pounds. The Haymaker was the unified WBC, WBA, WBO Cruiserweight champion when he decided to move up to challenge WBC champion Vitaly Klitschko. This and a matchup with Vladimir fell through en route to David versus Goliath. The Russian Giant, a two-time champ in his own right, had Hay outdone in the tail of the tape, but was unable to compete with Hay's stick and move strategy and promptly retired after the bout. David Hay became the fourth British fighter to win a heavyweight title after Bob Fitzsimmons, Lennox Lewis, and Frank Bruno. He also became only the second cruiserweight to do so after Evander Holyfield. And he did all this while being outweighed by 99 pounds. Valuev was 316 pounds and Hay was 217 pounds. Recently, reigning two-time unified heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua defended his crown against the undisputed cruiserweight champion Alexander Usyk. Joshua was 240 pounds. Usyk was 221 1/4. Usyk would join Evander Holyfield in the history books, and he outboxed Joshua to secure the win, and we eagerly await their rematch so that hopefully the winner can fight the winner of Fury White for undisputed. The first potential undisputed heavyweight champion in over 20 years since Lennox Lewis. Don't hold your breath though. Unification is akin to a plague in the eyes of the sanctioning bodies. And that's where we stand. I believe this timeline, this lineage, is a grand example of how sports write the best stories, which always write themselves. I've no doubt that the rich history of heavyweight boxing in particular, politics and corruption or not, will continue to write the best story ever. Keep punching and stay frosty.